The fitting room curtain ripped open with a metallic screech that echoed like a gunshot in the quiet hum of the store. Delaney froze, half-dressed in a linen blouse that suddenly felt too tight around her throat, her heart slamming against her ribs as if it might burst free. There stood Margaret, the sales associate with eyes like storm clouds over the Mediterranean, whispering, "You don't have to hide anymore, not from me." Delaney had come to Malaga to escape the ghosts of San Francisco, the kind that whispered failures into her morning coffee and turned every corner bodega into a reminder of what she'd lost. At 28, she was a freelance graphic designer who traded her fog-shrouded loft for a sublet in this sun-baked Andalusian city, chasing the myth that salt air and sangria could scrub away the ache of a decade spent building a life that crumbled like overbaked churros. Her days blurred into a rhythm of sketching logos for distant clients and wandering the labyrinthine streets of the old town, where every archway promised reinvention but delivered only echoes. The Banana Republic on Calle Larios had been a whim, a detour from the market where she'd haggled over 2 ripe figs and a bottle of Manzanilla sherry. The store was an outpost of American familiarity in this foreign sprawl, crisp khakis folded like origami, mannequins posed in effortless coastal chic, the faint scent of eucalyptus candles cutting through the humid Spanish afternoon. Delaney wasn't shopping for anything specific, she just needed to feel the cool press of air-conditioned normalcy against her skin, a brief reprieve from the sweat-slicked reality of her unraveling. She'd selected a few items on autopilot, a flowy white sundress that evoked lazy afternoons on La Malagueta beach, a pair of high-waisted trousers that might make her feel put together for once, and that linen blouse, soft as a lover's sigh. The fitting room was a narrow stall with a full-length mirror that reflected not just her body but the weariness etched into her fine lines, the faint crow's feet from squinting at screens, the shadows under her eyes from nights spent replaying old arguments. She stripped down to her bra and underwear, the fluorescent light unforgiving, highlighting the constellation of freckles across her shoulders like stars she'd once wished upon. As she slipped into the sundress, the fabric whispering against her thighs, a knock came, soft, almost apologetic. "Need any help in there?" The voice was American, laced with that West Coast lilt, vowels stretched like taffy. Delaney hesitated, her fingers fumbling with the zipper. Help. She hadn't asked for it, but the isolation of the stall suddenly felt claustrophobic. Sure," she called back, her own voice cracking like dry earth. The curtain parted just enough, and in stepped Margaret. Mid-20s, maybe 26, with olive skin that glowed under the store lights and long, wavy black hair tied back in a loose ponytail that begged to be unraveled. Her name tag gleamed, "Margaret, your style guide." She wore the uniform, a slim-fit button-down tucked into slim chinos, with an ease that made it look like high fashion, not retail drudgery. Her eyes, a deep hazel flecked with gold, locked onto Delaney's with an intensity that made the air thicken. "Let's see," Margaret said, stepping closer, her hand steady as she reached for the zipper at Delaney's back. The touch was professional at first, fingers grazing spine, adjusting fabric, but then it lingered, a warmth seeping through the thin material. Delaney's breath hitched, the mirror reflecting 2 women inches apart, the space between them charged like the air before a thunderstorm rolling in from the Strait of Gibraltar. "You have incredible posture," Margaret murmured, her voice dropping an octave, breath warm against Delaney's ear. "Like you've carried the world on those shoulders and still stand tall." It wasn't flattery, it was observation, raw and unfiltered, slicing through Delaney's defenses like a shard of sea glass. Delaney swallowed, her reflection blurring as tears pricked unexpected. When was the last time someone saw her, not the polished freelancer, not the ex-girlfriend who'd bailed when the going got tough, but her? I don't know about that," she managed, a voice barely above a whisper. "Feels more like I'm crumbling." Margaret's hand stilled, then one slid to Delaney's shoulder, a gentle anchor. "Hey," she said softly, turning Delaney to face her fully. Their eyes met, and in that gaze, Delaney saw her own fractures mirrored, Margaret's lips pressed thin, a flicker of something haunted in those hazel depths. "We all are, a little. But this dress. It hugs you like it was made for your stories, not just your shape." Margaret's smile was crooked, endearing. "Sounds like the start of a good book. I'm Margaret, by the way. And you look like someone who's ready for the next chapter." She stepped back, but not before brushing a stray auburn curl from Delaney's forehead, the gesture intimate, electric. They talked then, words tumbling out like olives from a spilled bowl. Margaret was from Seattle, transplanted to Malaga 6 months ago after a bad breakup with a chef who thought fidelity was a spice he could omit. She worked the store to pay rent on a tiny flat overlooking the port, dreaming of opening a boutique that blended Pacific Northwest flannel with Andalusian lace. Delaney shared snippets of her San Francisco exile, the girlfriend who'd left her for a tech bro with stock options, the freelance drought that forced her to pack 2 suitcases and a laptop for this Spanish sabbatical. By the time Delaney emerged from the stall, blouse and dress in hand, she bought both. The store had emptied, the afternoon sun slanting gold through the windows. Margaret rang her up at the register, slipping a handwritten note into the bag. Coffee at Café Central tomorrow. 3 p.m. Let's write that chapter. Delaney's pulse raced all the way back to her sublet, the note clutched like a talisman. That night, as flamenco guitars wailed from a nearby taberna, she lay awake, the linen blouse draped over a chair like a ghost of possibility. For the first time in months, the ghosts felt quieter. The next day dawned crisp, the kind of Mediterranean blue that made you believe in do-overs. Delaney arrived at Café Central 10 minutes early, her sundress swaying with nervous energy, hair loose and wild like the waves crashing below the Alcazaba. The café was a relic, wrought iron tables spilling onto the plaza, waiters in bow ties ferrying cortados and tostadas. She claimed a corner spot, sketching absent-mindedly in her notebook, swirling lines that hinted at Margaret's profile, the curve of her smile. Margaret appeared at 3:02, breathless, a canvas tote slung over one shoulder. Sorry, tourists blocked the street with a selfie mob. She dropped into the chair, ordering 2 cafés con leche in flawless Spanish, her laugh bright as the citrus groves beyond the city. They fell into easy rhythm, conversation weaving like the vines on the café's trellis. Margaret confessed her fear of stagnation, how retail felt like a cage after the freedom of barista life back home. I came here for the light, the way it paints everything golden. But some days, it's just glare, blinding you to what's real. Her fingers traced the rim of her cup, eyes distant, then snapping back to Delaney with a spark. You get that, don't you? The chase for something brighter. Delaney nodded, the admission bubbling up unbidden. Every day. I left behind a life that looked perfect on Instagram, craft cocktails, rooftop views, but it was hollow. Like I was performing for an audience that had already left the theater. Margaret reached across the table, her hand covering Delaney's in a touch that was tentative, then sure. Skin on skin, warm and alive, sending a shiver up Delaney's arm. Then stop performing. Be here. With me. The words hung, heavy with invitation, and Delaney felt the pull, magnetic, like the tide drawing her under. They spent the afternoon wandering, past the Picasso Museum, where bold strokes mirrored the chaos in Delaney's chest, through the Atarazanas market, sampling jamon and laughing over a vendor's flirtatious banter. Margaret's hand brushed Delaney's as they navigated crowds, each contact a spark, building to the moment when, under the shade of a jacaranda tree in bloom, Margaret leaned in. The kiss was soft at first, lips tentative, tasting of espresso and sea salt, then deepening, a promise sealed in purple petals drifting like confetti. For weeks, it was a whirlwind of stolen moments. Mornings tangled in Margaret's sheets, the port's foghorn a distant lullaby, evenings on the beach, toes buried in sand, sharing dreams under stars that felt closer here than in any California sky. Delaney's sketches filled with them, Margaret's profile against sunset, hands intertwined like roots. Margaret introduced her to her expat circle, a painter from Brooklyn, a writer nursing a novel in a harborside bar. They fit, seamlessly, 2 puzzle pieces clicking in a foreign frame. But cracks formed, subtle as hairline fractures in porcelain. Margaret's shifts at Banana Republic stretched longer, her phone buzzing with texts she dismissed as work drama. Delaney buried herself in designs, ignoring the gnaw of doubt. One night, after a dinner of paella at a hole-in-the-wall near the cathedral, Margaret's laughter rang too loud at a joke from their server, her gaze lingering a beat too long. "You're imagining things," Delaney told her reflection that night, but sleep evaded her, the sheets cold without Margaret's warmth. The betrayal came on a rain-lashed Tuesday, the kind of downpour that turned Malaga's streets to rivers. Delaney had planned a surprise, a picnic under the Gibraltar pines, bottle of Rioja and her latest sketchbook filled with portraits of them. She swung by the store early, the bell tinkling like a warning. Through the plate glass window, she saw it, Margaret in the back office, door ajar, pressed against the desk with Sophia, the leggy barista from their favorite cafe, the one with the tattoo of a compass on her wrist. Sophia's hands roamed Margaret's waist, pulling her close, their kiss fierce, unapologetic. Margaret's moan carried faintly, a dagger to Delaney's gut. She didn't burst in. Didn't scream. Just stood there, rain soaking her through, the picnic basket dangling forgotten from her arm. The world tilted, colors bleeding like watercolor in the storm. When Margaret emerged later, spotting Delaney huddled under an awning across the street, her face crumpled. "Delaney, wait, it's not." But it was. The lies spilled then, in halting confessions over cooling coffee at a nearby cafe. Sophia had been an old flame from Seattle days, just visiting, but the spark reignited over late-night shifts and shared homesickness. "I didn't mean to hurt you," Margaret pleaded, tears carving tracks through her mascara. "You're everything I want, but I got scared. It's too real." Delaney's chest ached, a hollow drum. Scared? Or just not ready to choose? She stood, voice steady despite the quake inside. "I came here to rebuild, not to be the placeholder." She walked away, the rain washing salt from her cheeks, each step heavier than the last. The days that followed blurred into a gray haze, Malaga's vibrancy muted like a faded postcard. Delaney avoided Calle Larios, detoured around Café Central, turned her sublet into a fortress of takeout containers and unopened sketchbooks. Freelance emails piled up, deadlines for logos that now looked garish, uninspired, but she couldn't muster the fire. At night, the port's lights winked mockingly through her window, a reminder of nights spent tracing constellations on Margaret's skin. Friends noticed. The Brooklyn painter, Lena, dragged her to a pottery workshop in the Soho district, where clay-smeared hands and the wheel's hypnotic spin offered brief reprieve. "Betrayal's like bad glaze," Lena said, wiping flour from her brow. "It cracks under heat, but you can always fire something new." Delaney nodded, but the words rang hollow, her heart felt kiln-baked, brittle. A week in, the confrontation came unbidden. Margaret appeared at her door one stormy evening, soaked from the downpour, eyes red-rimmed and desperate. "Please, just hear me out." Delaney wanted to slam the door, but curiosity, or masochism, held her back. They ended up on the tiny balcony, rain sheeting the air, a bottle of Tinto de Verano sweating between them. "It was a mistake," Margaret started, voice raw. "Sophia showed up out of nowhere, stirring up old ghosts. But you're not a ghost. You're the light I chased here." She reached for Delaney's hand, but Delaney pulled away, the sting fresh. "Light? You dimmed me, Margaret. Made me question every touch, every word." Memories flooded, the fitting room's intimacy, now tainted, beach walks where whispers of forever now echoed like lies. "I trusted you with my fractures, and you handed me shards." Margaret's shoulders shook with silent sobs. "I know. I'm broken too, running from a family that called my love a phase, a job that chews up dreams. With you, I felt seen, but fear. It whispers louder sometimes." She pulled a crumpled envelope from her bag, sliding it across the table. Inside, a lease for a small storefront near the marina, sketches of a boutique blending their worlds, flannel scarves embroidered with flamenco motifs, linen dresses with Pacific fog prints. "I signed it yesterday," Margaret said. "For us. If you'll have me. No more hiding." Delaney stared at the papers, the ink still fresh, her throat tight. Part of her yearned to bridge the gap, to rewrite the hurt into harmony. But trust, once shattered, didn't glue neat. I need time, she whispered finally. To see if I can love without the pieces cutting. Margaret nodded, standing with a grace that belied her pain. Their goodbye hug was fierce, bodies clinging like lifelines in the gale, lips brushing cheeks in a kiss that tasted of salt and what-ifs. As she descended the stairs, Delaney felt the balcony's chill seep deeper, a void where warmth had bloomed. Healing wasn't linear, it zigzagged like Malaga's alleys. Delaney threw herself into work, channeling ache into art, designs for a queer-owned winery in Rhonda, bold labels of intertwined vines symbolizing resilience. Lena's circle became her anchor, game nights with the writer, whose novel drafts she illustrated, sunrise hikes up to the Montes de Malaga, where wild thyme scented the air and views stretched to Africa. Yet Margaret lingered, a spectre in every linen shirt, every hazel-eyed stranger. One afternoon, sketching in the Roman theater's ruins, ancient stones whispering of empires fallen and reborn, Delaney's pencil traced an unintended portrait, Margaret laughing, head thrown back, free. Tears smudged the lines, but in the blur, clarity emerged. Love wasn't ownership, it was choice, repeated daily. The high tide of conflict crested at the expat art fair in the Palacio de Congresos, a riot of color and chaos under soaring glass ceilings. Delaney's booth displayed her latest, a series called Fractured Light, digital prints of shattered prisms refracting rainbows over Spanish landscapes. Whispers rippled, her work raw, resonant, selling faster than she could sign. Margaret was there, weaving through the crowd like a shadow-seeking sun. She paused at the booth, gaze devouring the pieces, fingers hovering over shards of Gibraltar, a piece of jagged light-piercing storm clouds. These are you, she breathed, voice thick. Beautifully broken. Delaney looked up, heart a war drum. Around them, the fair buzzed, laughter, clinking glasses, a jazz quartet crooning Nina Simone covers. But their bubble shrank to two. Not broken, Delaney corrected softly. Mended. With gold, like kintsugi. She stepped closer, the air humming. I saw your lease online, tagged in Lena's post. It's stunning, Margaret. You. Margaret's eyes glistened, hope flickering. Come see it tomorrow. Help me sketch the windows. No pressure, just us, trying. The invitation hung, a bridge over the chasm. Delaney weighed it, the risk of more pain against the pull of possibility. In the end, she nodded, the word yes, a leap. That night, alone with a sketchpad, Delaney drew not fractures, but fusions, two figures entwined against a sunset sea, scars visible but gilded, whole. The boutique opening was a month later, under a sky bruised purple by twilight. 20 threads, bridge fabrics, the sign read in elegant script, the space a tapestry of worlds, rough-hewn wooden shelves from Seattle salvage yards stocked with Andalusian silks, a corner for Delaney's prints framed in driftwood. Guests milled, expats, locals, even Sophia, who offered a quiet apology over glasses of cava, her compass tattoo glinting like a truce flag. Delaney arrived fashionably late, her sundress from that fateful day cinched with a belt Margaret had gifted, soft leather etched with waves. She spotted Margaret across the room, radiant in a black jumpsuit, directing traffic with that effortless charm. Their eyes met, and the crowd parted, an invisible current drawing them together. You came, Margaret said, voice a hush amid the chatter. Wouldn't miss bridging worlds. Delaney's hand found Margaret's, fingers lacing natural as breath. They toured the space hand in hand, the fitting area with mirrors framed in mosaic tiles, a nod to Roman ruins, a back room for workshops, where customers could customize pieces, weaving their stories into seams. As the night wound down, guests thinning, they slipped onto the marina-facing balcony. The sea whispered below, lights from docked yachts dancing like fireflies. Margaret turned to her, vulnerability etched in the moonlight. I was terrified of this, of us. But losing you. That's the real fracture. Delaney cupped her face, thumb tracing the curve of her jaw. We're both scared. But fear doesn't get the last word. Love does, if we let it. The kiss that followed was a reclamation, slow, deliberate, tasting of forgiveness and futures. No grand gestures, just two women choosing each other amid the salt-kissed air, the world's weight shared, lighter now. In the weeks that followed, life wove tighter. Delaney's freelance bloomed into a collaboration with 20 Threads, custom graphics for seasonal lines, her Fractured Light series inspiring embroidery motifs. Mornings started with coffee on Margaret's balcony, sketching side by side. Evenings ended in laughter over half-burnt tortilla española, dreams murmured into pillows. Betrayal's scar remained, a faint line, but it taught them vigilance, weekly check-ins over walks along the Guadalmedina, honesties aired like laundry on the line. Margaret's family back home. A bridge in progress, holiday cards exchanged, videos of the boutique met with cautious warmth. Delaney's ghosts. Quieter, integrated into tales told at dinner parties, fueling her art. One crisp autumn dawn, as they hiked the Caminito del Rey, narrow paths carved into gorge walls, wind whipping like wild applause, Delaney paused at a viewpoint, the reservoir below a mirror of sky. "This," she said, gesturing to the vastness, to Margaret's hand in hers, "is the chapter one didn't know I needed." Margaret smiled, that crooked grin that still unraveled her. "And it's only page one." They continued on, steps synced, the path ahead twisting but sure, two American souls in a Spanish heartland, mending what was torn, building what endured. Yet endurance demanded more than stolen sunsets and stitched apologies, it required the raw forge of deeper trials. Winter crept into Malaga like an uninvited guest, the Sirocco winds carrying chill from the Sahara, turning palm fronds brittle and the sea a steely gray. Delaney's sublet lease ended, forcing a decision, extend solitude or merge lives in Margaret's cramped flat. They chose the latter, boxes of Delaney's graphic tablets and Margaret's fabric swatches cluttering the space like metaphors for their entangled chaos. The boutique thrived, 20 Threads becoming a haven for the city's queer diaspora, drag brunches with custom capes, pride pop-ups featuring Delaney's rainbow-infused prints. But success bred shadows. A rival shop owner, Elena, a sharp-tongued local with a chain of tourist traps, accused them of poaching designs, her whispers poisoning supplier relationships. Yankee vultures, she sneered at a trade fair, her clique nodding like marionettes. Margaret, ever the optimist, brushed it off with charm offensives, free alterations for Elena's staff, olive branches in the form of collaborative scarf patterns. Delaney, however, simmered, her sketches turning angular, defensive. Why bend for bullies? She'd snap over late-night Merlot, the argument escalating until words flew like shrapnel. One such night, after Elena's latest sabotage, a delayed shipment that idled the workshop, Delaney hurled, "You're too soft, Margaret. This isn't Seattle niceties, it's survival." Margaret's retort cut deeper, "And you're too guarded, building walls instead of bridges. Is that why you really came here, to hide?" The silence that followed was a chasm, wider than the betrayal's echo. Delaney stormed out into the drizzle, wandering to the edge of the port where fishing boats bobbed like forgotten toys. She sat on the jetty, feet dangling over black water, phone silent in her pocket. Hours passed, the city lights blurring through tears, until Margaret found her, flashlight beam cutting the dark, voice tentative. "I hate fighting you. But I love challenging you. We're better together, even in the mess." They talked till dawn, huddled in Margaret's coat, truths unearthed like buried treasure, Delaney's fear of repeating her ex's abandonment, Margaret's dread of becoming her mother's disappointment. Dawn broke rosy over the waves, and in that fragile light, they vowed radical honesty, no assumptions, only questions. Spring unfurled in riotous color, bougainvillea cascading like laughter from balconies. The boutique's first anniversary loomed, a milestone shadowed by Elena's final gambit, a lawsuit alleging design theft, papers served amid bolts of silk. Panic rippled, lawyers, loans, the threat of closure. Margaret's resolve cracked then, nights spent pacing, whispering, "What if we lose it all?" Delaney anchored her, pulling strings with a San Francisco contact for pro bono legal aid, her designs going viral on expat forums, crowdfunding the fight. "This isn't just fabric," she told Margaret, hands framing her face. "It's us, woven from risks, resilient. The climax erupted at the courthouse in the Old Quarter, a squat stone building dwarfed by the looming cathedral. Elena's accusations flew in rapid Spanish, her lawyer painting pointy threads as cultural carpetbaggers. Margaret testified first, voice steady as she recounted inspirations, sketches from Malaga sunsets, Seattle rains, hybrids born of heart, not theft. Delaney followed, her words a quiet thunder, love builds bridges, not barriers. We honor this place by sharing it, not stealing. The judge ruled in their favor, dismissed, with a warning to Elena on baseless claims. Outside, under the cathedral's Gothic spires, rain began to fall, but they laughed through it, kissing in the downpour like scenes from old movies, the crowd of supporters cheering from afar. Summer returned, hotter, bolder. The boutique expanded, a pop-up at the feria, where flamenco skirts swirled with flannel accents. Delaney and Margaret adopted a stray cat, a tabby with one blue eye they named Azul, his purrs a nightly symphony. Trips dotted their calendar, a weekend in Ronda, picnics on sheer cliffs, a ferry to Tangier, spices and souks blurring borders. But the true test came in autumn, when Margaret's mother announced a visit, flying in from Seattle, tickets non-refundable. Decades of tension loomed. The woman who'd prayed away her daughter's confusion sent conversion pamphlets disguised as care packages. She wants to see the shop, Margaret said, voice small. Maybe. Understand. Delaney's instinct was protect, shield Margaret from fresh wounds. But love meant trust, so she planned a dinner at their flat, Delaney's prints as icebreakers, stories of Malaga's queer resilience shared over gazpacho. The evening unfolded in fits, awkward silences punctured by Margaret's anecdotes, her mother's eyes widening at the boutique photos, then softening at tales of Delaney's journey. You look happy, she said finally, to Margaret, hand extended tentative. Really happy. No miracles, but a crack in the armor, a first thread pulled. As leaves turned gold on the chestnut trees, Delaney realized the arc, from fitting room spark to this quiet fullness, betrayal a catalyst, not a curse. One evening, atop Gibralfaro Hill, city sprawled below like a jeweled map, Margaret knelt, not with rings, but a sketch, their faces intertwined, captioned Forever's first stitch. Marry me? She asked, hazel eyes earnest. Not today, but someday. Build every chapter with you. Delaney's yes was a sob laugh, pulling her down into the grass, bodies aligned with the stars. No grand tragedy, but a humanistic triumph, two women, scarred and soaring, choosing love's labor daily in a world that often demanded surrender. Years later, Puente threads a chain linking coasts, Delaney would reflect on that Banana Republic curtain, how one rip unveiled not ruin, but redemption. In Spain's embrace, they'd found home, in each other, in the stories they sowed, unbreakable as the Mediterranean's tide.